All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to our third AUGforums.com live broadcast. I'm Ryan Brown. I'm CEO at X-Byte Technologies. I'm here with Tim Rodman. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name's Tim Rodman and I run things over at AUGforums.com.
And it looks like my video is frozen, Tim. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see a frozen video. So we're doing a new live stream software here called StreamYard, and we're not off to a good start. Let's see. I'm going to try removing you and adding you back and see if that makes a difference.
Huh. This is fun. All right, guys. So this is
I can hear you just fine, so that's good.
Yep. Okay. So we're gonna try a couple things here and see if we can get myself back in here. It is.
And while you're doing that, I'll just comment on the StreamYard software we're using. So, we did the last couple of broadcasts, we used Zoom to broadcast over. It was kind of clunky, but did get the job done. This StreamYard seems to be a little more user-friendly. Maybe not as reliable. We're finding out. But one thing that's for us is we can see the YouTube comments, like everyone saying where they're joining from today. We can see it right in the broadcast window without having to flip back and forth.
All right, Tim, I'm going to jump out of here. I'll come right back in.
Okay. And then the other nice thing for us for bringing people into the broadcast, if you just want to jump in like radio call-in style, is we'll be able to just put the link, and you won't even need to do a password or anything. You just click on the link and it will ask you to share your audio and your video, and then you can even share your screen as well. And what's nice is it queues it up for us on the bottom, and then we just drag in when we're ready to bring you into the live broadcast. So, if it's reliable enough, which it's not looking like it is so far, but hopefully we can work through the kinks and it'll make the experience a little easier on our end and hopefully a little smoother on your end as well. Let's give Ryan a minute to come back in here. And thanks everyone for chiming in on where you're coming in from. I thought that was pretty nice during the virtual launch event that we had a couple of weeks ago that Acumatica did. You had a ton of people on that, and everyone was saying where they were coming in from. I thought that was made it kind of a nice community experience there. I was really surprised by how many people were coming in from, I think it was South Africa. There was one international spot from my perspective in the United States that really stood out to me. I think it was South Africa. All right, let's give Ryan another minute here. I'm going to text him, see how it's going. And we do have a little document that we put together with some things that we were thinking of going through today. It's probably more than we'll be able to cover today, but here's Ryan.
Hey, guys.
I was just mentioning the document that we put together. I don't know if you want me to drop that link in the chat, or what do you think? Or maybe wait on that.
You can go ahead and drop in the chat, and they can kind of take a look. Man, guys, this is what happens with technology nowadays. I don't quite know what happened, but I'm guessing some other app on my computer grabbed the video feed and just wouldn't let StreamYard have it. But we're back now. So thanks everybody for waiting for us. I'm seeing where everyone's from. A lot of cool places out there. So as we begin, I did promise I'd do a shout out after the first broadcast. So for Fiona, Tristan, Lily, my kids, love you guys. Of course, Jessie, my wife, mentioned her before, but that was my little shout out to them. So now they're internet famous. Let me go ahead and put my glasses back on here. So something else that changed for if you guys noticed, StreamYard, of course, the software, but I'm turning 44 this year, and I've been told that your eyes start to go. So I went and got an eye test over the weekend, and apparently now I need glasses when I'm on a computer. So I guess the hair is the next thing to go. I mean, first the eyes, then the hair. I don't know.
Next thing, I think it's already going. Must do it. I'm cold, that's why I got this on.
All right, guys. So I see a Florida here. Woo, from Florida. I'm down in Florida myself. Down just south of Tampa in Bradenton. So, all right, so guys, so getting into the meat of things right now, the generic inquiries. So for anyone who doesn't already know what a generic inquiry is and kind of coming in or maybe listening to this and someone recommends someone to take a look at this, the basics of it, if anyone's familiar with SQL, called SQL or structured query language, it's very similar to creating a view in that world. And a lot of developers are very comfortable because of that. The biggest advantage that you have with a generic inquiry is that you can take advantage of some of the calculated fields that Acumatica has done for you. So a prime example of how to use all of this is that you want to connect different pieces of data. So you want to connect, let's say, customers to items, to the items they've purchased. And so you got to connect all those things together. So this generic inquiry will allow you to do that. And in SQL, what you end up having to do is create all those joins to get to the data and then figure out where all the fields are. Within Acumatica, you can use the data access classes that are already existing and do all that linking. And in the newer versions of Acumatica, they've even given you the ability to quickly add related tables. So they've helped out the beginner be able to kind of quickly find those links, which is very helpful. After a while, you do kind of get used to ththings. And I would say even if you're into it and you're taking some examples they give you, be careful on some of those joins. So I'll go a little bit deep into some information for a second. When you create a join, there's something called a left and an inner join. An inner join is anytime that you're guaranteed to have a match or you only want to match on something. But a left join is when you don't know if you're going to end up finding a match, and if there's not a match, you still want to show the original piece of data. So let's say you want to show a list of customers along with a sales order or something like that. Well, if you did an inner join and they had no orders, you'd have no customers on the. But if you did a left, you'd still have all the customers even without an order. So be careful as you're doing some of that stuff, because if you take some of the examples that Acumatica gives you, at least in my experience, I've seen them give me an inner join. When I look at that, I'm like, you know what? I do want that original piece of data even without the other side of it. So I'm gonna make sure I do a left on that to get that data. And if anyone has any questions, we talked about the YouTube, you can go ahead and chime in with questions or comments or anything like that. We'll try and respond to them in the live broadcast here.
Hey, and Ryan, I'm going to try a feature here on the fly. I just dropped the link to the Google Doc that we've got going, and it looks like I can click on a comment. Let's see what happens. I have no idea. Oh, there we go. We can see the comment on the bottom of the broadcast. So if there's any question you want to start reading, I can click on it and highlight it for you.
Okay. And Tim, do you want to bring up your? We talked earlier, and you had a good picture about the GI Foundation.
Sure. Let me add that to the stream here. And I'll go full screen on that.
Yeah, so this kind of tells you all the different places where you can use generic inquiries. Tim, why don't you explain your screen here?
Yeah, so on this slide on the very bottom, you can see that ultimately everything in Acumatica gets stored in a database. And Acumatica can do either a MySQL database or a Microsoft SQL Server database. I think most people are probably using Microsoft SQL Server. It's a little more robust. But ultimately, everything in pretty much any ERP system that I know gets stored in a SQL database. But then Acumatica does have this data access class layer that sits in between the database and the generic inquiry. And then you've got the generic inquiry. Well, what I like about this slide is that, to me, it illustrates that a generic inquiry is not just an end in and of itself. It's a foundation. It can be an end in and of itself. It's just a way to query data, but then it can also be a foundation for other things. So you can put navigation on top of it, which is links to other places, which would also include side panels, which we'll look at. You can put reusable filters on it. You could put business events on top of it that trigger email alerts, things like that. You could do dashboards on top of generic inquiries, pivot tables. or you can even go outside to other systems using OData to things like Excel, Power BI, Velixo reports, Data Self, etc. So I like this slide because it illustrates to me the real power of a generic inquiry in that it's a foundation for other things.
Very cool. Yeah, so you can really see where this is going to go, and all of the different things that generic inquiry, as we call them, GIs, and you may hear me use the expression GI Joe or GI Jane. Those are those of us who love generic inquiries, and I'm glad I'm seeing a bunch of you guys in the chat today. Tim, we're gonna have to get some T-shirts made for the summit. With I did a little research today, and I thought I recalled the subtitle around GI Joe, a real American hero. So I'm like, perfect, GI Joe, a real Acumatica hero. I'm like, we got it. That's gonna be huge. Maybe we'll do some giveaways or something as we get closer to the summit. Tim, why don't you go ahead and throw my screen up? All right. So the first kind of the basic trick, and so I love generic inquiries, and so one of the first things I got into, and we wanted to early on, as Tim mentioned, you can connect to these generic inquiries to a lot of different things. So the first thing we were doing was business events. And so we said, hey, we want to do an email out to the salesperson when something happens with their order that they have in the system. Well, we also have order processors. And so the owner of an account may not be the actual salesperson. And we didn't want to go through the effort of creating a new custom field on the salesperson, which you could always do. And we know our emails are always in the format of first name dot last name. So what we did is we added we came into our generic inquiry editor right here, and we said, hey, just kind of concatenate, which is a text function. And so here's all your text functions, and you'll see concat here or concatenate is where you link some strings together. And so we just said, hey, replace the salesperson, which is another text function. Take the description, replace the space, which is like Ryan space Brown, replace it with a dot, and then add xbyte.com at the end. So that was a kind of an easy, cheap way of adding in the salesperson's email address without having to add any extra fields. So kind of a cool little technique we had, and then you can add those to the business events. Something that I didn't realize, I just did this accidentally, but you can actually, as you're configuring a business event, if you can put a calculated field into any of into the to or CC fields of your business event. So what I always do is I'll add the field to the actual body message of the business event to get what it's called. And I'll just copy that and paste it into the to and from, or the to and the CC fields. So a nice way to do that. The salesperson comes from, so let me go ahead and, the question came from where the salesperson comes from. So basically what I did to get that is on the sales order, it already has a salesperson listed there. You could skip that step if you didn't want to go to the salesperson or go to the sales order. You could always go to the business account and go to that as well, or the customer. The in between customer and salesperson is cus salesperson, so CUST salesperson, and that will then give you the link to kind of jump from one to the other. And that's just always experience that I in doing these. So anyway, so that's what we did on that piece of it. Kind of another cool trick, and one of the basic tricks I had out there was, and Tim talked about, hey, taking these generic inquiries and having them go to a bunch of different places. So we have our phone system that we have, and it's a VoIP system out there. And one of the things they can do is that when someone calls you up, they can have it call up a URL and bring up customer information. So what we did was, this is our standard customer screen, and so normally you could say you can add a filter here. You can see the phone number filter, which I had, and you could have that hit the phone number field. Easy to do. That's kind of the basics of that. But the harder part was, okay, let's say it's not the main phone number. Let's say you wanted to get other contact information in there as well. So what we did was we added a show all contacts checkbox. And let me show you a little bit of behind the scenes on that generic inquiry here. And this is live, so guys, bear with me on this one. So what we did is we related, let me get down here, contact, here we go. All contacts. So this is where we wanted to get all the contacts. So we have the customer and we do a left join to all contacts. And what we wanted is we wanted to be able to see all that. But we didn't want to have that all the time, because we didn't necessarily want to see everything on that same screen. We wanted to be able to show just this main contact for the customer, because if a sales rep's pulling up the customer list, they don't want to see all contacts for everything right away. So what we ended up doing was we renamed contacts to all contacts in your mapping on here, and you can create aliases for those. So that's how we got to all contacts. And then we just said in our conditions for the join, we said where show all contacts, which is our parameter there, equals true. So that was a nice way to kind of to see it, where we could dynamically allow a user to be able to turn on and turn off additional pieces of data. So another key piece of that is, let's say that you have something that may take a little bit of time to run or something like that. You don't always want to see that. You can add those checkbox to turn on and turn off that type of data by adding that to the join. So kind of a cool little basic trick to kind of throw out there to everybody. And then now because on a generic inquiry, any of the parameters can be part of the URL. You can see that right here. I was able to tell our phone system to say, hey, use this structure for the URL and put the phone number in there, and then that will allow them to kind of to do that search, and it'll search across all contacts. So it was a way to kind of bridge from generic inquiry going to our phone system and some of our tricks we talked about.
Hey, and Ryan, I'll chime in there. There's a new feature in 2021 R1 that allows the side panels to be somewhat like what you're just showing here, that they're dynamic in the sense that whatever row you click on, you can actually control which side panels are available for the row.
Yeah, and from a use case perspective, I could see that where if like you're looking at business accounts and you may want to see, hey, if this is a lead versus a customer versus a vendor, you can always change that up and have just a single screen to do stuff, which is really handy. Let me show another. Actually, you mentioned the new version, so I'm going to go ahead and jump out to that real quick here. And I'll give a couple use cases we did here. So one of the other cool things with generic inquiries they did in the new version is they allow you to link out to outside things. So here's the tracking number, and I just grabbed this from the shipment. I just put the tracking number in here from one of the packages, and as I click on it, it's just going to go ahead and bring up FedEx for me. So a really cool, handy thing that I'm sure everyone's been asking about, because before you always have to copy and paste and bring stuff over. So this is kind of a nice way to get to that data. Now, a little limitation for everybody, and this is I've been testing out with a beta of 21 R1. It does not allow these any outside sources to be a side panel. So a really cool thing would be just to kind of push out a side panel to be able to see that tracking without having to open up a new window. So I've not heard whether or not it's coming to allow it, or if there's a technology reason why they can't have it as a side panel. But you do have to have that pop out. Another cool use case, and I'll bring up here. This is you can tell by the different colors of which system I'm on. So this kind of reddish orange is our 20R1. And kind of another piece of advice out there: if anyone's not color coding their versions, highly would suggest you doing that, because we ran into that where we accidentally put something into our production environment we didn't mean to. So now we've color coded. We have green, which is our test for our current version. We have this reddish color, which is our newest version that we're testing out. And then we have blue, which is our production. So it's a way for us to quickly know exactly exactly which version we are. And someone mentioned the Google Doc does show tracking numbers as a side panel. That's showing a linked GI to show the tracking numbers. But when you click on that, what that brings up is another window. So that's the clarification from that. You definitely can have a linked GI as a side panel on there, but the data itself is going to be a pop-up window. When you're configuring it, if you put it as a side panel, it does not show on the icons for side panels, at least in the beta version that's out there right now, from what I've seen. So going back to this other use case, and kind of this was probably a common occurrence. So someone calls you up and you bring up the order. And one of the things I love about side panels and generic inquiries is how they've evolved, is that you don't have to jump to a bunch of different places to get to information, so that you can be on this page and someone calls up. I have a little side panel right here, which is the order. And you can scroll here, you can see it. You can click on this button right here if you want to get the full screen of it, and then click that if you want to go back into side panel mode. But so this customer calls up and they're saying, hey, you know what? I actually found this on Amazon for $499. Can you match that price? All right, so normally you'd have to kind of jump to Amazon and do that. What I add is a little extra side panel, and I just click on this link right here's the line description, and it brings up Amazon and automatically searches for that description for me. You could really get more elegant with this and have it also add like model number information from the item if you wanted to. There's a lot of different ways you could advance this from an Amazon searching standpoint, but I just want to kind of bring this up. And then so I'm looking at this and I see a sponsored post here. Oh, Acer laptop $499. Okay, you know what? I can match that. And you know what? I don't even have to open up the order and go to a new screen. I can just come down here. I'm going to scroll to my right here, and I'm going to go ahead and you know what? I'm actually going to give you $490 for the price. And I can save that right from here. So
I really like that example, Ryan, because I think that illustrates the power of basic hyperlinks, right? And really, in my opinion, one of the key points of why a browser-based ERP system is so important, because a lot of times you think about integrating systems and you got to get all these developers involved and doing API calls and all that. Well, actually, a lot of times you can quote integrate systems, in my opinion, by doing stuff like you just did right there. That's really cool.
And one of the other really nice things about GIs and side panels, at least side panels on GIs, is that you don't have to do a publishing of a customization to do it. And side panels on entry forms are really nice, but you do have to actually do a customization to do that. So you could be in the middle of the day and someone could have a great idea to do something, and you could come here and just do that. And you can enhance it. And so that's one thing that I really love, because otherwise you have to wait to the end of the day or a good time to kind of get to that. And Tune's chiming in here. No way in Sage you can do that without programming. Acumatica would love to see that, Tune. So thank you very much. They will. I don't know if they'll send you a shirt or a mug or something. Who knows? We'll see. And
maybe the shirt that I'm about to drop in the comment right now. Maybe you can get that one.
Oh, did you already create our G.I. Joe, a real Acumatica hero shirt?
No,
our Sage sucks. Okay. And Cricket Golfer asks, will this be available for viewing later? It will, actually. The power of doing this through YouTube Live is as soon as we're done, it's available for viewing later. And actually, thank you, Cricket Golfer, for mentioning that. I forgot to send this link to somebody. Shame on me. I posted enough on LinkedIn. Maybe that counts.
Yeah, and on that point, real quick, Ryan, another advantage of the StreamYard software is that we can schedule the broadcast ahead of time. So that way the link is available ahead of time. I know before you had to refresh the live page like right at the time of broadcast, which is really annoying, but the link stays the same also after the fact. So the link that you're watching right now on YouTube is the same link that the recording will be available.
All right. So as you can tell, I really love side panels. GIs, great, awesome. I love those as well, but I honestly have a love affair with side panels. So I'm going to go ahead and show off something else. So a couple things. So for anyone who's using the e-commerce plugin for Shopify or for BigCommerce, we are a BigCommerce customer, and we really like the integration. I will be doing a future broadcast on some of the growing pains with BigCommerce and some of the limitations, and walking people through that, because I know that's especially for anyone looking to go new into BigCommerce, some good things to know ahead of time, and they'll save you some headaches and some hair. So not everyone looks like me, but what we did is we added a side panel for the sync status screen for BigCommerce. So we do have real-time syncing of our inventory to BigCommerce, and that works great. But let's say I want to actually see, did that happen? And instead of having to look through a bunch of logs, I'm looking at the item, and maybe I see there's a mismatch of pricing or something. And so I'm looking at BigCommerce, and I see that. I can come in here and I can say, oh, hey, here's the item. Here's the last time it did its sync, and it was yesterday at 8:04. And I can see that the status is it was synchronized. Okay, so it did work. For whatever reason, let's say it didn't work, then I can just click on that sync button right there, and it'll do a sync right there. So it's a great way of kind of taking a new Acumatica feature and dropping it in. Something else that's interesting. I see Toon saying BigCommerce experience. If anyone wants to chat BigCommerce, I can have individual chats also. I've been talking to some people recently about it, and just kind of helping out navigate some of those hurdles. But getting away from BigCommerce for a second, another cool thing that at least that we did on this screen is that we've turned on audit history, field level audit history. Big lover of that. Like generic inquiries, I think having field level audit data gives you a lot of power. Salespeople and users in general aren't always accurate in their descriptions of what they do. So we like to have that audit history, so we can kind of come back and say, oh no, I'm looking at that and I know you told me something happened, but that didn't really happen. So great tool for that. But also we found other uses for it, and this is one of those cool uses that I'm gonna kind of show off here. And I'm actually gonna go into, do I have a non-stock handy? Let me go into non-stock, and this is our production system. So, and we're gonna go to, we'll do another, this is another trick, of course, that's include historical data. I just click on that. I'm gonna talk about that in a second. I need to add a quick filter.
Ryan, while you're doing that, can I make a quick comment on the field level audit?
Yeah.
So I just did one recently where someone wanted to know when opportunities were moving through the various stages, and we use field level audit for that, and then reported on the data. So normally you could just tell where an opportunity is at currently, but if you want to capture at what date and time it changed from one stage to another as it's moving through the pipeline, and you want to analyze how much time an opportunity is spending in each stage of the pipeline, you could turn on the audit history to capture the data, and then you could report on it with a generic inquiry or another reporting tool.
Nice, very nice. It's very similar to kind of what we did here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look up this item, and this is the 6252 CPU. I'm not going to get into a lot about our business process on things, but for us, categories matter a lot more than individual products. So we do a lot of stuff on the category level. So this is actually a representative product that we have that represents the entire category of these. So for us, we did kind of two cool things on here. One of which is that we took a normal report that is in Acumatica, and we said, hey, I want to structure it for a side panel because I want to be able to see the data without having to do the full screen. So you can see here that we took the report and we shrunk it down widthwise to fit in this side panel perfectly. And so this is a particular product, and we're trying to say, hey, why? I'm seeing some receipts here, but sales didn't really increase until January. Well, why is that? Like, was our pricing wrong? And unless you do, unless you actually have the load pricing, I forget the actual feature right now, but Acumatica does have a way for you to load bulk prices and see those. But for us, we change prices based on a lot of market data. So I wanted to get a sense. Okay, hey, what happened in this time frame to increase our sales of this? So what we did is this right here is just a GI, item-based price updates, which goes through audit history and shows you. I'm going to go ahead and reverse that, and so shows you all the price changes. So it looks for certain key fields in our list or in our audit history, and so now I can see, hey, look, here are all the price changes that occurred in audit history, and I can see now that, hey, January, for whatever reason, $2,700 or $2,699 is like a magic price. Maybe it was $2,599 to kind of help generate some sales. So that we sold 120 as soon as we dropped that price to that. So there's something mentally in our customers when we looked at this. So we're able to kind of to see that. Okay, here's the pricing. Then we just sold sold below a certain value. So we wanted to raise our price back up just because we weren't overexposed on them. So that's why you see the recent change right here in the price up to a large increase.
Ryan, are you able to show the generic inquiry for that? Because I know what I ran into pulling audit history is it can be kind of tricky, and you can kind of see it on the very bottom where you see the full field name in there. You able to show how you did that join?
Yeah. So let me go ahead and item-based price updates. Let me see if I expose that. I have.
And we've also got a question when you're ready about do you take a big performance and storage hit when you're turning on field level audit?
Yes, storage hit. We have to selectively delete data every month in that audit history table. So we just do that manually through SQL. But we know certain tables that we want to see the data. We have certain thresholds by table, and so we will delete the data that is of certain tables after 6 months, certain tables after 3 months, and certain tables never. So like item tables, we never want to remove that data because we want to see the full history of changes. For sales orders, we really only need to see, I think it was 2 months of data, because of the fact that once it's already invoiced and we've done any kind of looks at it, 2 months is a good time period. So we'll delete that. But yeah, we had several 100 million records in that table.
That's a lot of records.
That's a lot of records.
Now you're on-prem though, right, Ryan? So for you, it was easy to just do SQL to delete that data. You're not. If you were a SaaS customer, that might be a little more challenging to do that.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I don't know how SaaS customers deal with that.
You probably could do a custom if you want to do just raw brute force SQL. You could publish that as a customization project. That'd be kind of clunky. You'd probably want to do more of a scheduler type of task to do that in SaaS.
Yeah, or of course you could always scrap SaaS, buy servers from Xbyte, and host it on-prem. That is also a very viable solution for all of this.
Hey, what about performance? As long as you're not turning on field level audit for every single field in the system, as long as you're very discerning about when you're turning it on, have you had any issues with performance?
We have not seen any issues with performance. So we do work with a company who does database performance tuning to help with our database performance tuning, and that was a big help for us. So we had someone come in and they spent a day of service for us and was able to suggest some tuning pieces and some indexes to help some performance. So we've done a lot of. You've seen really here some of our tweaks that we've done. And so in doing that, we've gone way outside of the scope of what Acumatica normally does. And so that's forced us to look at new indexes, which they don't do. And that's we had certain dashboards that would take 10 seconds to load, and we put in indexes, and they're instantaneous now. So that's a big help.
And so what you're doing is a lot of stuff on the SQL side, which most Acumatica customers doing SaaS can't do that directly. Although you could experiment with, it's I would say a little risky to do this, but you can publish SQL scripts straight into your SaaS environment as long as you do it through a customization project. But if you're going to do something like deleting records on a regular basis, you really should get together with an Acumatica developer, in my opinion, and turn that into a processing screen or some kind of code that's sitting in the Acumatica application, just because you don't have the ability to do it the way Ryan's doing it. Or take Ryan's suggestion and go on-prem and buy servers from him.
None of this processing screens. Let's all really focus on the buying servers piece. But looks like Leslie chimed in here that they had Acumatica. Here you go. Delete their audit history before. So they looks like Acumatica will do that as on your data if you need to. And it looks like info sourcing added something to do a processing screen.
And about, will indexing work for SaaS? I don't know. It's a good question. I assume it would, and maybe you can do the same thing as Leslie did. Just submit a support case to them, and they can do the changes on their SaaS side. To me, that's a good thing about Acumatica, in that you're not. It really is just a database in the cloud. You don't have access to it, but I've seen people have good experience with Acumatica being pretty flexible. So if you just ask them to add an index to some tables through a support case, I think you got a pretty good chance of them doing it for you.
Tune, I'll get back to you on the Dell server piece, or maybe even publish what we do from an on-prem perspective. So anyway, so getting into this right here, it's been a while, so this will be some fun experimenting. So let's see here. So the first thing I did on this one is that we wanted to add a parameter, of course, for the combined key, which that was just the item ID, and then that allows for the primary filtering, so that gets you to just that one item. And then I also added in the table name. So some of these, as you're experimenting with things, you're going to want to make sure you add these filters, these conditions. If not, you're gonna die. The audit history is a massive table, and it can take a long time. I would also generally recommend only trying to parse audit history in Acumatica. We have tried to do things just directly in SQL before to get data out, and the performance for something that Acumatica does, the performance they get from it is way better than we could get straight from SQL. So we do just GIs when we're going to audit history, and so we have the table name is inventory item, the combined key is our item that we pass into it, and then we look for it where the modified fields include base price, because generally we're going to only modify the base price, and so that's how we're able to get to it. And then on the results grid, on the price, let me expand this puppy out. You'll want to experiment with this one.
This looks great.
I honestly forget all the pieces that went into this one.
I think the key here, Ryan, is that the problem is it stores every field in one column in the database. That's the problem, right? And so you kind of have to parse through it, and it'll be like field name, value name, field name, value name, and it's just one big cell in that field, right?
Correct. I'd forgotten about this one. So it does take some practice getting to it, and you can see in the last record we showed off that it sometimes does grab extra data, but in that case it was just one word, and then it knew to stop after that word in what it retrieved back for us. So we knew that, hey, sometimes that it will grab that extra piece, but it was worth it for us to be able to get that get majority of the time what we need to see. And then I think we put the user, but I think I hide that on the GI because I don't care about the user on things. So yeah, so the audit history is fun, but even on searches like this, we've seen it crash stuff just because it'll bring up too much information. And so yeah, so that's getting back to what we originally did. That's kind of like a combination. We took reports, pulled it into a side panel. We made another GI here with audit history, pulled that in there, and we're able to kind of give our product team an easy way to kind of search for stuff. Oop, Tim, you got it.
Sorry, my fault. I'm relocating in the middle of this broadcast because of construction going on outside my door.
Ah, nice. All right, so Tim, I think you've got more experience with the GIs on the exporting to Excel or OData side. Do you want to take a couple minutes and talk about some of that?
Give me filler for 60 seconds while I relocate.
Okay. All right, so I will do a little plug here. In our last broadcast we did about the new Acumatica features. So we were talking about the financial reports. We talked about GIs a little bit, and both of our guests from Crestwood and from Action Associates, they'd also mentioned Velixo. And so we're doing kind of a series on reporting for these live broadcasts. And the first one today is on a Geek Out session on GIs. And then we couldn't schedule it in 2 weeks, but in 4 weeks from now, we are going to have someone join us to talk about reports and kind of build the case on why reports are better. So that's in 4 weeks from now. 2 weeks after that will be Gabriel from Velixo. I'm trying to get him on board to that's a tentative date right now, but that he will be building the case on why Excel with OData is a better way of doing reporting. Was that 60 seconds enough for you? Was someone timing me? Is Tim relocated?
Yeah, I'm relocating, so that's what you get with live here. We've got someone hanging doors right in the hallway outside the room I was in. So I'm now outside. You'll hear some birds in the background. But all right, let's see here. So I will share my screen. And we want to talk about this one. So I want to talk a little bit about exporting to Excel versus OData. Start off with that, and then throw a little Power BI, sprinkle that on at the end. I have a theory that, let's take this one as an example. When someone comes to you and they ask for a quote report, my theory based on my experience is that most of the time what they're really asking you for is just a data dump to Excel. And the reason why I think that, based on my experience, is when people would ask me for a report based on a previous company that I worked at, I would go off and do it in the reporting tool using a Sage ERP system I was using at the time. And I do a lot of work to get all the formatting right. It's just a lot of work to go do it in a true report writer tool rather than just a GI where you're just grabbing the data. So I do all that work, then I come back to them with the report, and they'd say thanks, and that would be it. And then I'd walk around and pop into meetings and see what people were actually using in meetings. And I discovered that most of the time people were using Excel. And so the lesson I learned is I would do a lot of work to put it in a nice looking report. But then when I walk around the meetings, what are they actually doing with that report? They're just exporting it to Excel. So you can save yourself a lot of work by just doing it in a generic inquiry. And a generic inquiry, of course, has this export to Excel button up on the top. So you can export to Excel, and that's great. But the problem with that is it's a very manual process. And every time you want updated data, you have to click the export to Excel button. There's another problem with this, and that is most of the time when you're exporting to Excel, you're then going to do some kind of data manipulation after the fact. You're going to maybe add some columns or even do some formatting manipulation to the Excel file. So let's take the shipments one as an example. I could either click on the export to Excel. I'll go ahead and apply the 1,000 record limit just to make it faster. It'll do its thing and it'll pop up an Excel file when it's done. Now this Excel file is going to have all the data sitting right in the Excel file. There. Now the problem is this is now pretty much static data. There is a little bit of a data connection here that it can refresh the data, but in my opinion, it's not that great because you're still just getting the data in this table format. You can't do that data manipulation stuff. But alternatively, we take a new Excel file here, and I'm not going to go all the way through this for the sake of time, but just to point it out, this is where you can connect via OData. Now, OData is just a standard data protocol. You can think of it like HTTP or HTTPS. That's the protocol for accessing a website, including Acumatica. OData is just a data protocol for accessing data. And what's nice is that it's built into Excel, so there's no add-in you need to install here. Now, there's also Velixo, which is an add-in and adds some additional stuff. But even if you've just got standard Excel, as long as you're on a fairly current version of Excel, you do have to be, I believe, on the Windows version of Excel, but you've got this out of the box. And so as long as you go into the generic inquiry and you enable the generic inquiry for OData, right here, expose via OData, you know that you'll be able to access that via Excel. And that's huge in my opinion, because if in prior systems you had to give someone direct SQL access, which opens up a whole bunch of security problems, and you might have to even punch through a firewall even if you solve the security problems. You might have to be on the local network to get to the data. With Acumatica, I know as long as I can access Acumatica, all I need to do is check a box, and I know I can access the data via OData. That's really smooth. It eliminates a lot of friction. And by doing OData, I'm not going to go through the details on this, but we do have a little blog post link here you can check out. This is number 6 in that Google Doc that you can see in the live comments. If I click on this, you'll see there's a blog post here walking you through how to get a comma-separated list of purchase orders for a vendor using Excel. So this will walk you through how to use OData. If I scroll down here to show you the end result, the little nice Power BI sprinkling on top of this at the end is that I get everything into a pivot table, and then this is the Power BI piece down here. This black line here, which says CONCATENATEX, that's actually a Power BI formula. And I think this CONCATENATEX function, Ryan, we've talked about this before, but it's got a lot of use cases, I think, for ERP systems like Acumatica, because basically it can take multiple rows and just turn them into one field of comma delimited values like you see right here. So I see now I've got 3 POs, and there's a comma delimited list of my purchase orders. Now this one's got 78 purchase orders, and that field's going to be really big. So you can then scroll down further and see, well, let's go into the measure, make it a little smarter to say if I've got more than 4 POs, I just want to display more than 4 POs. And if we scroll down here, it looks a lot better now. That 78 purchase orders just says I've got more than 4 POs. This one, though, still lists out the purchase order numbers. So check out that blog post. You can see it up here. It'll walk you through how to do that. But it's leveraging OData, and then it's also leveraging the Power BI functionality that's also now native to Excel. As long as you're on a fairly current version, a lot of people are on Office 365 now, so you've got the latest and greatest. Power BI is built into Excel. You don't even have to install anything.
I see a question here. Christian wrote down, is there a workaround for Mac with OData?
Now I've got a plane flying overhead, so give me some filler before I answer that.
Now I don't know the issue with OData and Excel, so I don't know if that's just the Mac version doesn't allow the OData interface. I will throw out something, and again, I'm just not familiar with this, but I'll throw out a potential workaround. I know there's an ODBC driver from CData. It's free to kind of check out. I don't know how long you can use the free version for. The licensed version is probably several hundred a year, I believe. I forget the exact costs, but that could be a workaround if you have limitations with Macs being able to access OData directly. Is use that CData. Just if you look for CDATA and then OData ODBC, you should be able to find it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly on the specifics either. I know in general, though, the Mac version of Excel is really not designed for this. I don't know if it does OData. If you can get around that, it's not going to have the Power BI stuff built in. You won't be able to use the CONCATENATEX piece. Now, I have seen something Velixo is doing in their recent version. They're actually supporting both Mac and Excel Online, which is really interesting to me. Excel Online is just the web-based version of Excel. Now, I don't think it's the full support for all the Velixo features, but I know Gabrielle is a big Mac fan. And if he can get the full Velixo available for Macs and Excel Online, that's really interesting. The standard Excel does not do that.
All right, guys. One last thing, kind of talking. I'll spend just 2 minutes on this one. Tim, if you want to throw my screen up there. This is another. If you do have access to doing SQL and using views, we use it for some aggregate data. So we show our 1 month, 2 month, 6 month sales history. So we're able to what we do is, again, I talk about SQL so much for those who have access to it, and you don't have to have on-prem, by the way. You can always you can still host a server somewhere and then have access to the SQL side of things. I think maybe even Azure lets you have some of the access to things. But in this example, we have a view which we then schedule to actually push that data as an insert into a table. And we actually schedule we delete all the records from the table on, say, a nightly basis, and then we insert it in from a view. And that way, our calculations on some of this aggregate data doesn't have to happen on the fly. We don't need up to the second data. So having it at night then allows us to easily then get the data already pre-aggregated. And so showing it right here is just the fields as far as 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Those are just fields in a table. You could probably do the same thing as you just added custom fields to your records and then populating those at night as well. You always do something like that. If you want to do like a processing screen from Acumatica to do something like that, you'd always do it through Acumatica as well. So kind of like a little tip to kind of get some of that information is to have it pre-calculated. So that way you're not having to do. Sometimes if on these screens, if you wanted to do maxes and stuff like that, it gets expensive from a timing perspective, especially if this is a screen that people use a lot. So having that already pre-calculated is a big benefit. All right, Tim, do you want to give us we have a few minutes here, and there's a kind of a cool technique called the Wyatt.ERP technique that you mentioned that you want to go over everybody.
Okay, this one, how do I cover this briefly? Let me just do this. Let me put up the live notes that we have.
There you go.
You got them up already? You want me to put them up?
No, if you want to put them up. I was showing something else. So as you're bringing up live notes, this is speaking of Gabriel. This is something I found when I was going through the Acumatica the community out there. For anyone who's looking to get the last record of a certain kind. Let's say you wanted to find the last time you sold an item and what was the price. That can be difficult when you're trying to get the data, because when you're using any aggregate functions, you can do maxes, you can do mins, you can do averages, but there's not a last function. So like what Tim's talking about, not going into all the final details, but this one, let me get the heading for you if you want to look at it, how to get the last sales price and quantity using GI, a great tip on how to do that. He basically does a self-join to the table and is a really creative, let me see if I can get it where he mentions that. He has, here it is, where the order number is less than the other order number. So here's your self join, and when you do that, basically this will only this will only join records where the order number the order number is not the greatest. And then once you do that, you have a listing, and you can then in your condition say, I want where the order number from SO line previous is null, and that way, because it's only linked to it's only linked to the most recent or the latest, depending on how you sort things. That will do a selection for that. I definitely did not do this justice explaining this one, but if the common use case to try and get that information, go ahead, and if you need something like that, go take a look at this on the community forums from Acumatica, and get that. It's a really cool technique. And Tim, I'll go ahead and push it over to you to kind of go over Wyatt's technique.
All right, so this I'm just going to hit real briefly. Here's another blog post you can check out. This is a user on augforums.com. I love the username. It's Wyatt.ERP, named after Wyatt.ERP, famous lawman. But this is a really cool technique to me, because what he does is he actually uses attributes. And now I've got a saw in the background. This is awesome. He uses attributes to allow you to join together two completely independent things. So I've used this. You can use so many creative situations where, this happens a lot, where you need to take two completely independent things and you need to put them together using what would be called a union statement in SQL. And I'm trying to relocate. And a union statement in SQL allows you to take something. Let's take an example of, like, let's say I wanted to grab a balance in my AP account, and using the subledger, I've used it this way before. And then I want to go grab a balance in the general ledger. They're two completely separate areas. One's accounts payable subledger, one's the general ledger. And I want to total up the results and compare the balances to each other. Well, I can't really do that just using a join, because it's like taking two completely separate data sets and putting them on top of each other. And then I want to line up certain columns, but I want to take two completely separate data sets, put them on top of each other. The Wyatt.ERP technique is, or the Wyatt.ERP technique, you can follow this blog post on it, but it allows you to, the idea is you use an attribute. And the key thing is, let's see if I can find it here. The key is this. Right down here, you'll see a join. This is the magic. You just create an attribute that has two values in it, or you might have multiple values in it, and you join over to that attribute, and then from there you join over to whatever other data set you need. Now, I think it's somewhat limited because you don't want to do real complex tables here. It would get pretty crazy. But in this technique, what it allowed me to do, see if I can find the final results on it, in this opportunity thing, I can take an amount from an opportunity. So right here, I've got opportunity number 387. And what it allows me to do is take this $178,000. Actually, I think I already did it. Yeah, here we go. The opportunity 387 was a $713,000 opportunity. But using this technique, we spread it out across 4 months and turned it into $178,000 in each one of the months. So I'm using the Wyatt.ERP technique to do this. It's hard to do it justice in just a few minutes. There's a lot of creative use cases for it, but take a look at this blog post and you can dig into the details.
All right, guys. So we just hit our hour mark. I know Tim and I could geek out for forever and ever on generic inquiries and kind of ping pong back or tennis match back with a bunch of cool ideas. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, for and making it through the little camera incident in the beginning. So hopefully we recovered and gave you guys some valuable information, and had a lot of fun doing it. So guys, thank you very much. Thank you to the AUG Forum sponsors. I see there's people now walking behind me too. You can see the live environment is what happens.
Yeah, I think I learned two things today. One is it's a live broadcast, right? And that may be encouragement for anyone who wants to come on. Leslie says I'm louder than the saw, so hopefully it still came through. And that's the idea here. It's just a raw live broadcast. Put it out there. And the second thing I learned is that actually I just blanked on the second thing that I learned. But second thing I learned is that a lot of what we can do here is just highlight something that's already out there. Like Ryan pulled up a community post. I pulled up some blog posts. We don't have the time to do it justice, but we're just kind of highlighting some things that are already out there, making them bubble to the surface. So you don't have to go weed through a ton of content on the forums and figure out what's cool. And if anyone else wants to come on and just highlight something that's already well documented, so you don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it and do the whole tutorial on it, but you're just kind of putting it out there, highlighting it, letting people know about it.
I like it. I learned get your shout outs done in the beginning, so you don't forget them at the end. So now my kids will love me again, and they're now internet famous. So guys, thank you very much. They said the thank you to our sponsors for augforums.com. I probably should not rush through that name. augforums.com. Thank you to the sponsors there. There's a link on the augforums.com/live page where you can go take a look at all of our sponsors. Thank you very much for help. They allow us to make all this happen. Thank you for Tim for joining us today. Thank you to Exploit for allowing me the time to kind of help create some of this. And guys, thank you all for attending. If you guys have ideas, hit us up on augforums.com. Post your ideas. We'll try and turn some of those into segments. We'll even invite people up on different pieces. So as we go through these throughout the year, we're turning some of these into some kind of more of a video or radio call-in show and kind of bringing people in and letting them kind of maybe we do a geek out session for others and let those everyone else kind of show off some of their stuff. So we'll have to see as this year goes on.
Ryan, what would you prefer? People send you an email, or maybe we could start a discussion topic and put a link on the live page to it for anyone who wants to chime in with ideas.
Let's do a link. Let's do a discussion forum, just because if I've never talked to someone before, it may get thrown into my junk folder and I may never see it. And so you
can see what everyone else is suggesting too, and they can interact. I'll do that. I'll put that on augforums.com/live. It'll just be a discussion topic in the forums, and people can make suggestions there.
Perfect. And it looks like Matt, a relative of mine, maybe Matt Brown. Brown's a pretty unique last name. So there's only I think there's only 1,000 Ryan Browns in Florida. It's crazy. But yeah, guys. Thank you all for attending. Feel free to share this with your LinkedIn friends. What are associates? Whatever they're called on LinkedIn. Your friends. Let's call them friends. Share on LinkedIn. Share the link to this as it goes out. Oh, there's no more sound.
I still hear you fine. Uh-oh. Maybe it cut us off.
All right. Well, maybe it cut us off. Anyway, yeah, go share us. Tell everyone about us, and we'll keep these up, guys. All right. Thank you guys very much.
Bye, everyone.